A very good evening, everyone. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, you are audible.
Uh, Thank you so much. Welcome,
Am
sir.
I audible? Am
Very
I
good.
audible?
Yes, yes, sir. Audible, sir. Audible, sir. So again, a warm welcome and very good evening to all dignitaries, all faculties, our respected resource person, Dr. Atul Juneja, sir, and all delegates presented in today's session of one-month certificate program on effective research writing. We are privileged to introduce today's resource person, Dr. Atul Juneja, sir, an eminent expert in research methodology, biostatistics, and clinical trials. Sir served as a former scientist F and coordinator of clinical trials at India and at ICMR New Delhi, where he played a powerful role in advancing clinical research and trials in the country. Currently, Sir imparts his knowledge as a guest faculty at AU Digya College, Government of NCT, Delhi, and serves as a visiting consultant in biostatistics at PSRI Hospital, New Delhi. He also contributes as a visiting faculty member at Nehru Homeopathic College and Hospital, New Delhi. He actively contributes to various scientific committees, including his role as a member of National Advisory Board for the Journal of Case Reports and participation in the Scientific Advisory Committee, Clinical Trials, and DSMB of the Central Council of Research in Ayurvedic Science, CCRS, New Delhi. His commitment to disseminating knowledge is reflected in his authored course material for the MPS program at the International Institute of Population Studies. His significant contributions extend beyond the academic realm. Uh, Sir was nominated as the representative of ICMR for an expert committee tasked with providing technical opinion to the Honorable National Green Tribunal regarding the remediation of mercury pollution in Kodaikanal, a role that had a substantial impact. Dr. Juneja sir has played a crucial role in the selection of project posts at the National Institute of Medical Statistics, shaping the institution's research initiatives. He has also been a visiting faculty member at Guru Gobind Singh IP University, New Delhi, where he has been instrumental in teaching research ethics for PhD programs. Dr. Juneja sir is presently a faculty member for the DNB program of Ops and Gynae for research methodology and biostatistics, with over 60 publications to his name, including 25 as the first authors. His contribution to medical research are highly regarded. Such influences reaches beyond national borders, with participation in more than 70 national and international conferences, including invited talks in countries such as the USA, Canada, Singapore, China, and Malaysia, etc. Dr. Juneja sir's comprehensive expertise, dedication to research, and profound impact on the medical field make him an invaluable resource person for all our future and ongoing programs. We are honored to have him with us today again, and we are eagerly anticipate learning from his wealth of knowledge and insights. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our respected resource person, Dr. Atul Juneja sir. Please, sir, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tiwari sir. It is, as usual, I must repeat my words that it's a pleasure, honor for being part of Institute of Applied Statistics initiative of disseminating research methodology throughout the country and trying to reach out to each and every individual who is interested in research. And I must say, these are my repeated words actually, but I don't, I just can't resist myself saying that. It's always pleasure and honor to be part of these programs as faculty. And it's more enjoyable when you are actually physically present with all of, among ourselves, because the changing faces, the smiling faces, enjoying the presentation, not enjoying the presentation, feeling sleepy. All these things are very important, and it gives, initiative to the teacher that what he should do further. If it is good, then he should try to improve. If he sees that the students are sleeping or not answering to the things, then he needs to change his views. But of course, the limitation of physical programs is that only the limited number of people can be accommodated. But through this, so there is always a, what I suggest, Tiwari Sahab and Shubham Pandey sir, that you should arrange the programs in a balanced way, so that you have online programs as well as the physical programs, because the physical interaction cannot, the socialization, the physical interaction cannot replace it. It's not a criticism, but just a feeling of my heart, actually. So the topic, as I always mentioned, that the topic chosen by this group is always very crisp and clear, and they try to move in a very baby step ways and try to cover all aspects in a simple, going from very simple to the complex issues, so that the students or the young faculty or the experienced faculty can work on their work based on a standardized way. So these programs, since the presentation what I have today for you, relatively you might have, there's a possibility that many of you might have gone through it earlier also, must have seen on the internet, must have seen on other programs. So what I say, whenever we read something or hear something which we have already done, so these are this makes some, it's not that it is a repetition. In fact, there are certain things which are reminder to ourselves, that if they are important, or every time if we find something there is new to learn or something new to think of. So this is the way we should look at the presentations. It is not that you might think that, oh, ye to humne padha hua hai, ye to humne dekha hua hai. But always, there's always something new. I always believe in that. Now I would request Tiwari sahab कि आप presentation वहां से चलाएं, तो it would be more comfortable for me. I hope you're okay with it.
Yes, I'm just starting the presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot.
It's
So,
honor, sir.
मैं next बोलूंगा तो सर, ठीक है?
Yes,
So
yes,
the
yes.
presentation contains 3 parts: data quality, data maintenance, and presentation. So we can have 3 different lectures of more than 1 hour each for it. But since these 3 things are linked, and I must compliment the organizers that they have tried to put it in a one presentation. So usually these type of presentations are sometimes a challenge to the challenge to the speaker, because these are independent linked, but they need the full discussion. So it's if it won't be wrong to say that it could be a 3 hours lecture. Data quality पे 1 घंटा बोल सकते हैं, maintenance पे 1 घंटा बोल सकते हैं, presentation पे 1 घंटा बोल सकते हैं. But I have tried to put it in a one capsule so that it is easily understood and easily simulated by the participants. I hope you will like it. I look forward to your cooperation. If something is missed, of course, we can always chat about it, and there might be many things which might be repetition of the earlier lectures. But believe me that I always try to make the presentations such a way that they are linked to something else also. Even my own presentations are linked to each other, and I try to link with other what you're going to hear, you must have heard or going to hear in the future lectures. Next, please. So just to start with the very basic slide, what is data and data collection? You might say that's a very primitive slide, but as I've already said, I start with very basics and then try to move on. So data is a collection of information gathered by observation and measurement. Such a simple sentence, but many times in Viva, if somebody asks data collection, the student many times get confused. कि क्या आंसर करें इसका? तो क्या है इसका सिंपल सा आंसर? Gathered by observation and measurement. आप कुछ देख रहे हैं, किसी को ऑब्जर्व कर रहे हैं, उसको रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं या उसको मेजर कर रहे हैं, इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं. Data refers to any set of information on facts that is represented in various forms. कि ऑब्जर्वेशन किया और मेजरमेंट लिया. अब वो किस चीजों से रिप्रेजेंट होगा? वो टेक्स्ट से भी रिप्रेजेंट हो सकता है कि आपने लिखा कि हम वहां गए, हमने ये देखा, स्टूडेंट्स ये कर रहे थे. जैसे विजुअली फोकस्ड डिस्कशंस में the details are presented in form of text. In images, X-ray है, MRI images हैं, so there are also data, audios, or videos or numbers. It could be anything. So observation and measurements can take form of any of these things, and that depends what kind of research work you are doing. Data collection is a process of gathering, measuring information on variables of interest. Now, this is first point was very general. Third point becomes specific. What are the variables? So we should have knowledge about what kind of variables exist around us. Right? I'll come to it more in more details. So, so data collection is a process to get an answer to formal and informal queries. कि आप कहते हैं कि वहां कहीं हमें जाना है तो वहां रश होगा क्या? Somebody says, oh, I went there, there was a lot of queue, so you might have to stand for a long time, so you go before the shop opens, or before the dispensary opens, or before the cinema hall opens. I mean, something can be done. So it was just an observation somebody saw and he gave you the answer. Or it could be a high-tech hypothesis generated through statistics and you get an answer to it. So this is all data collection. The purpose is that to get an answer to it. Okay, next. So what are data collection approaches? We have to think how to collect the data and what are their considerations. So किस पे data collect करना? So that's important. Target group. So target group has to be precise. Suppose you're targeting doctors, suppose for any survey. So you have to decide. You need clinicians, you need pathologists, or it could be any discipline of medical science. So that again depends, connects to the objectives of the research and what data to collect. So technically speaking, type of nature of variables. Here I would like to give a very simple example. किस तरह का वेरिएबल हमें उसमें यूज करना है, तो ये हमें ऑलरेडी ऑब्जेक्टिव के साथ डिफाइंड होना चाहिए. सपोज we need a proper measurement of a variable. Suppose blood pressure. So you need an exact, you can't write hypertensive or not hypertensive. You'll have to measure the exact blood pressure. But when you go, when you look at certain reports, in our common day-to-day life, we go to any lab and get ourselves investigated. And many times it is written present, antibody present or antibody absent, something like that. The values are there, but more concern is that it is present or absent. So the variable has to be categorized in that case. So one should have the knowledge about, even if you're statistician and you are trying to help somebody, you should understand what kind of work the other medical researcher is doing, so that you can help him to identify the variables in more efficient and more precise way. And that is possible when you know what kind of variables are around you. And who shall collect the data? And of course, you have to see, when if it is a very technical nature of data, then obviously the investigator himself has to jump into the field and then see. And if it is a simple questions, then you can appoint investigators. So this all depends what kind of work you are doing in any defined time frame. So these are the considerations the data collection broadly has. Again, it has many considerations, but broadly I have mentioned, and we'll slowly move on to other things next. So outcome variable. So I have already explained that is very important. The variables are considered important considering the sample size, inclusion and exclusion criteria. For example, you're talking about, say, tuberculosis. So you have to be very clear whether you're going to take MRI diagnosis, you're going to sputum diagnosis, you're going to take X-ray diagnosis. So you have to be very clear on those variables, what you're going to use in terms of efficacy or other outcome variables of interest. Next. So importance of data quality. Data quality की हमने बात शुरू करी है, तो why it is important? So the results what we have got ultimately have a base how the data was collected and what its quality was. So research results are only good as the data they rely on. हमने एक analysis किया, advanced analysis किया, उसके results आए कि हाँ, this drug is better than the other one, or this drug is helpful in reducing the blood pressure. If the blood pressure itself was not correctly measured, that has no meaning. So it has to be seen in light of the fact that what kind of data you have collected. So data quality is a very important part, and that has to be decided in the very beginning of your study, right? So data quality impacts the trustworthiness of the conclusions. That's such a very nice sentence, that if how you can trust the data when you know that it has a decisive quality. Data quality is crucial for human research, impacts health decision making, right? Because the data what you have collected, you have analyzed, has implications on decision making. So if your data is of not good quality, then what to do? Then the decision making is also likely to be going a wrong way. So that the collection methods vary based on study questions, their approach of reaching the target, personal interviews, phone based, etc. So I mean, you all know it's a simple thing. Next. Common data quality issues. So it's what could be the most simplest one is the one incompleteness. So data is incomplete. The next could be inaccurate. Inaccurate means it is, I mean, I'll just remind you about the sampling error. And I mean, I'm really fond of interacting with students. So I always tend to say something beyond when if something comes up. So inaccuracy. Inaccuracy कैसे आती है कि blood pressure आप गलत measure कर रहे हैं. So what are this is known as non-sampling error. There's a difference between sampling error and non-sampling error. So this is non-sampling error is a basically measurement error. So your data is not valid. So recollect your things. What is difference between validity and reliability? Inconsistency of the measurement is a concept of reliability. So contradictory information. Suppose somebody did not get COVID, and you're asking the questions related to the stigma the person is facing on, and he's answering to those questions. So that means the data is not reliable because there is an inconsistency in the pattern. He didn't have the COVID, but he's answering to those questions about the stigma, which was supposed to be answered by the person who has somebody, I mean, the lady is unmarried and you are asking about the number of children and all. So these are the something which lead to inconsistent data. So you have to consider all these things before proceeding to analysis stage. So timeliness. Timeliness is important for the data where the data is in dynamic state. Suppose, I mean, how many, like clinical trial registry, which I was handling when I was in chair. So suppose that today we have registered 500 trials. So, but our website is showing 300, which was previous day's observation, may not be right. So we should have some target or updating the results at a certain point of time. Next. So what are the data collection issues at the collection stage? Identifying the right variables. I've already spoken about it, that what kind of work you're going to do. It has to be categorical or it has to be continuous. That depends. Ensuring the items and data set that ensure consistency. I've already explained. Considering the variables based on the objectives of the study. So see, what are the objectives? Suppose you're working on diabetes. So I mean, all possible factors which could affect diabetes, you should consider that. Not those variables which you don't have any relationship and somebody else has done and you also keep on collecting information on that. So considering biases, particularly for soft parameters and health outcomes. So you can take care of those things through blinding. In case of clinical trials, suppose you are observing the soft outcomes. So it would be better if you conduct a trial in a blinded way. It could be double blind trial or a single blind trial. That depends on the situation in which you can handle those things. Ensure the confidentiality and anonymity of the respondent. So these are the basic things. Now let me come to the technical point, which many times is not very closely seen at. Survey design and justified sample is important consideration of quality. And somebody might say, what is there? Which come up at analysis stage, such as computing confidence interval. Suppose the sample size is too small and you have computed a confidence interval which is showing a very large interval. So it would be difficult for a health decision maker to decide on what the magnitude of the problem is. So it is not only the validity and reliability, it is the statistical considerations are equally important to get a proper answer to what you have analyzed finally. If it is a small sample size, then you may not have right results to have. Or if it is an oversized sample, you might have the insignificant clinical decisions which might come up statistically significant and may lead to wrong results. So it has to be an optimum sample size. That's just an example. Next. So how to address data quality issues? Standardization. So define data quality matrices. So क्या होना चाहिए उसको पहले define कर ले. Validation. Regularly validate the data. That means the measurements. We're talking about the measurements are right or not. Reliability. I've already discussed. Correctness of the data. Incorporate the valid data entry system. Valid data entry system means, suppose, I mean, you have taken the participants in the age group of 20 to say 60 years, example. So your data entry mechanism should not accept below 20 or more than 60. It should flash double data entry. These are the certain things which ensure reasonably good quality data. Then efficient linking of files through softwares. If, I mean, there are different multiple files you're handling, and some information, some basic information has to be fetched from the other file. So the appropriate software technique should be there. So you should be trained in that, or somebody there who is trained into it helps you. And most importantly, the training, educate and the research team on the collection of data and data management. So cross-check data entry points. So that means if be it a field or lab, you are supposed to, with your team, the quality control team, to visit those places and see if the data collection work is being done in a right way. Next. So next is the data maintenance. What we normally call, students call it as a master chart for their thesis work. So there's some basic considerations what we have experienced that are missed at that stage, and many times it takes more time when finally you try to handle at that stage of analysis. So I'm just briefly discuss those points which perhaps you might be knowing, but doesn't matter. Next. So always remember, health outcomes, if you can closely think to yourself, the only these 5 health outcomes are possible. All others are sub part of it. The first one is the worst outcome, what anybody wants least to have, is death. Then next is a disease. So somebody has a disease. And then next is a disability. Next is a discomfort or dissatisfaction. Discomfort and dissatisfaction usually come in the mental. So everything of health science comes under this category. So these are the, in a way of identifying the health outcomes through and defining a proper variable. Next. So data in a variable, of course, you know, data, next page. So variable क्या होता है? Variable is a characteristics attribute or a measurement that can have different values. That is why it is called variable. So what kind of variables we have? I'll just briefly speak about it. The data could be of qualitative nature and the quantitative nature. Qualitative क्या होता है? Somebody is having a diabetes present, diabetes absent, hypertensive present, hypertensive. These are qualitative. But when you're measuring HbA1c, fasting blood sugar, measuring exact blood pressure is a quantitative. So that again depends how to pick up the variables based on your objectives. So qualitative may ordinal variables and the nominal variables come in picture. Nominal means, suppose we are coding male and female. So we say male 1, female 2. So 1 and 2 have no actually magnitude, but it is, the number is trying to identify whether one is male. Reason being, the reason is very simple, that suppose you're writing male M, you're writing small l M, and or somebody is writing capital M. So there is a likelihood that the computer might understand it differently. So the numbers, when given 1 and 2, the computer would read as 1 and 2. So but it has no magnitude meaning. So it is, these are called nominal variables. Suppose like when we answer to the whenever we order something on Swiggy or Zomato, then they ask how much you were satisfied. So you're very satisfied is 5, somewhat satisfied is 4, not satisfied is 1, or something like that. There. So those are called, when we code it that way, those variables are called ordinal variables. There is an order. 4 means you're very satisfied. 2 means you're just okay with it. But that does not mean that 4 is double of 2. It only says that you were less satisfied. You cannot say that when somebody has coded 4, that he was double satisfied than the person who coded as 2. So it only speaks about the order. So 4 is highest satisfied, 3 is less satisfied, 2 is averagely satisfied, 1 is not satisfied. But 1, 2, 3 have no ratio meanings actually, right? So these are the points which are described in these 2 slides, which I try to put it in as simple as words, and of course you might be knowing it. Next. Next. I've already spoken about. Quantitative variables में भी continuous होते हैं, discrete होते हैं, ठीक है? Continuous क्या होता है? I'll just, of course, we all know it, but many times, technically speaking, it's always good to get reminded of. What are continuous variables? Continuous variables means there are infinite values between two values. For example, if I may ask you, your blood pressure you're measuring a blood pressure. What do you think? It's a continuous or a discrete? It is a continuous variable. Your system is measuring 120, and you might say 120 by 01 तो नहीं है भाई. 120 mm of mercury हमने measure किया, 120.01, 120.5 का तो कोई provision ही नहीं. There is no provision of such thing in your instrument, but the value does exist. Suppose tomorrow the medical science feels that even 0.5 mm of mercury is important, there would be instrument to handle it. So that it depends on the least count of the instrument. But the blood pressure of 120 in one reading and 121 in another reading has infinite values between 120 and 120. So that is why it is called a continuous variable. But when you are counting something, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like the number of children, so number of books you have in your home, number of pages in the books, they are all discrete variables. They're continuous but discrete. Discrete means, to put it in a still more better way, or that in discrete you can judge the next value or the previous value. In continuous variable, you cannot judge the next value. 120 blood pressure, next value could be 120.0001. Somebody might say. So there are infinite values between any 2 points, right? So, I mean, you can, to put it in a very crude way or something like that, you have a necklace. The pearls in it are discrete and the thread is continuous. So I think that would be easy to ठीक है. तो उसके बाद what are considerations for data capture? Clearly understands the objective of the study. There are certain repetitions of what I have been talking, but they are important to get reminded of. Identify the variables and its nature to be studied. So कौन सा variable है, ये important है कि आप उसको continuous में measure करना चाह रहे हैं. Suppose आपने कोई study की and you want to see कि how many, just you want to know, when it's not a study, somebody wants to know in this OPD how many children were there. So you can say by your records that it's adult population or a pediatric population. You could code it in a categorical way, pediatric or adult population, that's all. But if somebody then asks you what is the average age of the person reporting to a OPD clinic, you won't be able to calculate. So that depends what kind of work or you are likely to have in future. So collect the data accordingly. So age का जहां तक सवाल है, अगर आपको यही सवाल ये पूछा गया है कि pediatric age group में कितने थे, आप उसको कोड कर सकते हैं, pediatric yes, pediatric no करके. But age लिखना कोई मुश्किल नहीं है. So it's always suggested that in such type of cases you measure the exact value, and then later on you can recode it and then decide how many were pediatric and how many were in the adult population. But you have scope to know if somebody asks how many were above 75. So if you have coded pediatric and non-pediatric, you won't be able to do it. So if you anticipate some questions like that in future, you have to collect the data in such a way. So you should have based very clear criteria of exclusion criteria based on those variables. कि किसको exclude करना, and what are outcome variables? What you're going to measure? Diabetes की study कर रहे हैं, you are interested only in HbA1c or you are interested in fasting blood sugar or PP. So that all depends. So these are the things which have to be defined before you start your study, not midway. You can of course change your things midway, but then it needs, if it is a clinical trial, it needs permission from the ethics committee. So choose any appropriate variable and then next. So consideration for data entry in Excel. Many of you might be from computers and all. आपको ज़्यादा पता होगा, but ठीक है. Define the nature of variable. It's a string, memo, or a numeric integer, or with a decimal. String means आपने नाम लिखा. It cannot be measured. Memo means you want to write text on it, so memo field use kar lijiye. So it has to be seen. So difference. Let me just give you one small example which has been shown in the present slide. Different subgroups of data should be identified as individual identity. Example: SBP and DBP should not be a subgroup of variable blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure should be as independent identity. because if you combine, it gets difficult to put it in, to transfer into a statistical packages. So this is usually done. The first column says the blood pressure, and then the sub column says systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. It is suggested. It is not that that cannot be handled, but then again, you need a better softwares to handle it, and you may not have the people to do it with you. So if you want to transfer to basic software, basic statistical softwares, you should have independent identity, systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. Yes, of course, clinically, you know that they are a part of blood pressure, but you should have a separate variable for it. So it is under assumption that all variables are uniform and subgroup of data. Next. So put variable names in first row of the Excel file so that this is very comfortable when you need to transfer it to SPSS. Okay? Avoid special characters while naming variables. These are all avoid. It is not that they cannot be handled, but it gets difficult. Do not start the variable name with a number. So no space between variable name. Avoid mathematical functions. Avoid using separate sheets for different subgroups. You have a column which says group 1 and group 2. So whatever way you enter the data, uh, you shall have a separate column for a group, whether it belongs to group 1 or group. There's no need to have a you can do it. I'm not saying it is wrong, but statistical analysis is relatively easier if you have a separate column to identify whether this is a case group or a control. Okay. Next. Avoid using text, codify the data instead of putting mild, moderate and severe. As I told you that number को identify करना आसान होता है, 1 1 ही रहेगा. Mild आपने capital M में लिख दिया और किसी ने small MLD लिख दिया, किसी ने, the computer would identify differently. So in these situations, nominal variables are preferred. So this ensures the uniformity of the data, right? Next page. So define the variables in the format section, what kind of variable it is. So no unit should be written in data cell. This is very important. Many times students write height 175 centimeter. वो सारा centimeter में ही है. So that has to be identified in the variable column, not in the data itself. And even the commas preferably should be avoided in the data. Next. Next. So data presentation. हमने देखा कहाँ से, what is data collection, what are the data quality. अब ये सब हो गया. अब डेटा को हमने प्रेजेंट कैसे करना है. So presentation of the data is the first step of having a feel about the data. कि हमने एक डेटा कलेक्ट किया. Now what it is trying to say, it is just making the small words for you. I mean, a kid, when you start speaking, you feel so nice about it. So similarly, it is a data presentation always speaks what you have done so much, right? Next. So easy and a better understanding of the subject, attractive for technical and non-technical audience. Okay, before we move on to any proper inner statistical analysis, let's have a look at the data. And it speaks for technical as well as general audience. Usually it is the first-hand information of the summarized data. Guides for further analysis. Easy to compare. आपने कुछ information ली है, you can see what has happened in other subgroups. Something you get a feel that ये चीज better है या ऐसे. Permit a visual check of accuracy and reasonableness of calculations. अब ये कैसे visual check accuracy कैसे बता रही है. Suppose आपने बार चार्ट बनाया और उसमें एक चार्ट आ गया जिसमें एक छोटा सा बन रहा है जिसमें 105 साल की उम्र दिखाई जा रही है और आपको मालूम है कि आपका डेटा जो था वो 60 इयर्स तक का था, तो उसमें 105 का बार चार्ट दिख रहा है, तो इसका मतलब डेटा में कहीं डेटा एंट्री में मिस्टेक है. You need to look at that and move on to that. So this visual presentation or table है, tables आपने बनाई, so you get something which you were not expecting. So obviously there's something you have gone wrong in data entry. So presentation में ही hint मिल जाता है कि कुछ गलती हुई है. So this ensures the data quality. So data presentation is now linking to the data quality. That's what I've been telling, that everything is linked to another. Next. Data should be presented in a simple way, should create an interest in the subject of reader, should be in line with the objectives. Okay, should concise without compromising on contents, facilitate further analysis. कि जो आपके ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं उन्हीं लाइन पे आप उसको प्रेजेंट करिए. ऐसा नहीं कि बहुत बार क्या होता है, डोंट माइंड मेनी स्टूडेंट्स डू, कि दूसरे ने ऐसा टेबल्स बनाई है तो हम भी बनाएंगे, बट वो दे आर नॉट, his objectives might have been different and your might be different. So you have to see what you need to look at. So, next. So presentation of data could be tabular and visual. Table, जो हम tables बनाते हैं, table is a representation of data of in form of rows and columns. Very simple answer to it. Table can be simple or multi-dimensional. Yes. Text is the main content of the tables. इसमें picture नहीं होती. Table is used to keep track of information such as quantities, numbers, names, addresses, and other details. More focused on specific items with clear magnitude. ठीक है? तो ये sentence जो है, जब when you will do it, you will come to know. कि हमने ये बताया कि दिल्ली, मुंबई, चेन्नई में आपने डेटा कलेक्ट किया, prevalence of a disease. So cities के नाम एक तरफ आ गए, prevalence दूसरी तरफ आ गए. So this answers that. So what is visual presentation? Visual presentation is a chart, is a graphical representation of data in symbols like bars, lines, and slides. While there are several types of charts, the most common are pie charts and etc. Of course, you know it. Charts should contain minimal text. It should have only labels, what the value is, that's all. The chart is used to help understand a large amount of data and its component. Next. Tabular presentation, there's just a picture of it. You can have a look at it. It's a systematic and a logical representation of data. It should have some logic. Okay, next. Significance of tabulation: simplifies the complex data, facilitates the comparison, gives identity to the data. Yes, we've talked about it. The data, once arranged in suitable form, gives the condition of situation at a glance, or it's a bird's eye view of what has been done so far. Presents, this is a very catchy sentence. I was impressed with this. Presents the evidence to a narrative impression. Suppose somewhere a paragraph is written on that, and suppose you have written a paper or a report, and based on certain table you have given some narration. Somebody, if he's not able to exactly catch it, he would go to that table and think, and then he would better connect, oh, what the person was trying to say, or it could be other way also. So it is evidence to what you have written. आप लिख रहे हैं कि ये the diabetic trend is changing from over this years to this year. तो आप टेबल में देखेंगे 2010 में क्या था, 2011 में क्या था, 12 में क्या था, तो is that happening there? So this is just I'm trying to explain. Next. Approaches to tabulation, which we all know, but many times we miss. We know it. So what I mentioned in the beginning, so these lectures, what the Institute of Applied Statistics has arranged, are obviously not to say every time it is something new. Sometimes these are the reminders of what we many times miss. We won't say we don't know, but we miss many times. So assign table number. कोई भी टेबल बनाए उसको नंबर डालिए. ये बहुत कॉमनली मिस होती है, मतलब बच्चे बहुत कॉमनली कर रहे हैं. गिव ए ब्रीफ टाइटल टू द टेबल. ये वाइवा वगैरह में अगर ये मिस होती हैं चीजें तो नंबर कट जाते हैं उसके. Titles and row of the column should be precise and linked with the title. Very important point. Many times, we write something else in the title, and we write the row column titles, not directly linking to it. So we have to see. So for group data, the class interval should be with optimum width. So that can be seen in the nature, considering the type of data we have. Unit of measurement should not be missed. Cannot be taken for granted and obvious. कि weight ले रहे हैं तो किलोग्राम में ही होगा, नहीं हमें लिखना पड़ेगा. Data should be arranged in a logical consideration. We talked about it. Title of rows and columns should be self-explanatory and not supported by footnote. Footnote always has something else to say. कि आपने significance उसमें लिखा है, p-values लिखी हैं. Suppose star लगाया है, तो 1 star means p less than 0.05, 2 star means p less than. This is a convention I'm giving. But title को आप footnote में explain कर रहे हैं, that should not happen. ठीक है? If it is a pick from somewhere else, you pick the table from somewhere else from a standard text, do give the reference of it, even if it is your own document. Next. So जनरल पर्पस टेबल्स, कोई आपने स्टैंडर्ड टेबल्स उठाई हैं डेंसिटी की, जैसे जेड वैल्यूज होती हैं, दे आर स्टैंडर्ड टेबल्स जनरल पर्पस. और दूसरा स्पेसिफिक टू रिसर्च, सिंगल डायमेंशनल मल्टी डायमेंशनल, 2 वेरिएबल हैं तो 2 डायमेंशनल होगी, 3 वेरिएबल है तो 3 डायमेंशनल कहलाएगी. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट. So this just a picture of how the tables look like. You all know it. Next, graphs and diagrams. Next. So graphs usually express the numeric relationship between the two lines. Always remember, graph में x और y की बात होगी. For instance, histogram, line graph are graphs. Because x-axis and y-axis are linked, prefer to be made on a graph paper. Graphs are representative to scale. ठीक है? May facilitate computation such as median and mode. May not be very attractive. Diagrams. Diagrams may not be they may not express the mathematical relationship. Bar charts are not graphs, but graphs can be considered as charts. ठीक है, ये ध्यान रखिए कि बार चार्ट्स ग्राफ नहीं है. Constructed on a plain paper may not be representative of scale. This is again an important point. Does not help in computations. Attractive view and comfortable for non-technical. ठीक है. Next. So proper selection of graph or a chart give the title to the presentation. Selection of scale should be in line with the magnitude of attribute being presented. कि आप किस चीज की बात कर रहे हैं, neither too small nor too big. So persons like per 100, per 1000, per 100,000. Suppose your cancer incidence देख रहे हैं per 100,000 देंगे. ठीक है. So it depends what kind of variable you are using and what is its magnitude. अब अगर हम उसको percentage में लिखें तो नहीं चलेगा. It will be 0.00 something like that. Should be neat, attractive, and proper shading and with legends. Should be simple enough for non-technical reader too. This we should always remember. Next. So line graphs, time trends वगैरह दिखाते हैं कि इतने period पे क्या incidence था. Bar graphs is used to display the category of data and its compare data using solid bars to represent quantities. X-axis पे और कितना उसका height है. Histogram x-axis की width भी consider करता है. Line plot, it shows the frequency of data on a given number line. Not very popular. Next. So circle graph, stem and leaf plot, box and whisker plot. Some box and whisker plots are quite popular. Next. So line graphs, trend, it shows the trend. Next. Bar charts, I've already talked of. They are simple bar charts and compounded bar charts. When there's a comparison between the 2 points at one place, so you have compounded bars. And suppose you're studying the magnitude of a disease in one city on different time frames, that's simple bar charts. Next. Stacked bars, you're putting all different look like series of columns or bars that stacked on top of each other instead of making multiple bars. एक दूसरे के ऊपर रख देते हैं different categories when we have many variables to consider. Next. So histogram represents the frequency distribution of a continuous variable, whereas a bar is a diagrammatically compressed discrete variable. Very nice explanation. I was impressed with this particular slide. Next. So pie chart 100% को divide करता है कि how much one person is getting a share. One segment is getting a share, not persons. One segment is getting. So this is very obvious that 60. So elections में आप देखेंगे results आएंगे. So immediately what percentage of shares one party is getting. So pie से होगा इसमें क्योंकि ultimately तो 100% है. तो ठीक है. Next. Stem and leaf plot. तो इसमें क्या होता है कि जो stem में होता है वो यूनिट प्लेस के होते हैं और बाकी उसके आगे के हम अलग फॉर्म में लिख लेते हैं. अगेन नॉट वेरी पॉपुलर नाउ इट इज. हिस्टोग्राम्स वगैरह ज्यादा पॉपुलर है. ठीक है. जैसे 0, 7, 8 तो यानी कि ये वैल्यू क्या है 7 और 8, यानी कि 10th प्लेस पे कुछ नहीं था. यूनिट प्लेस पे था, तो लीफ में सारे यूनिट प्लेस वाले आएंगे, ठीक है। तो ये बहुत पॉपुलर नहीं है आजकल, क्योंकि अब आजकल इतने सॉफ्टवेयर अवेलेबल हैं कि बार चार्ट्स एंड हिस्टोग्राम्स आर वेरी इजीली मेड, सो इनकी जरूरत नहीं पड़ती। नेक्स्ट, so box and whisker plot, this gives the minimum value, maximum value, median, first quartile, and the third quartile. So it overall, it doesn't give the mean. It overall assigns the whole distribution to the data, how your values are likely to be distributed. So it is a basically brief summary measure of the data. So you need not look at the whole data. This plot will tell you how your values are scattered. Next. Frequency polygon is a line graph of class frequency plotted against the class midpoint. It can be obtained by joining midpoints of the top of the rectangle of the histogram. Next. Cumulative frequency curves, less than and more than. Next. So less than more than one जहाँ coincide करते हैं वो median होता है. Less than curve, more than curve क्या है? Suppose आपने cumulative frequency plot की in their table, say more than 100, then you say class interval suppose आपके 10 के थे, तो next में आएगा more than 90, उसके आगे आएगा more than 80. So the frequency will keep on decreasing. If you have other way around, less than. So less than 100, less than 90, the values will keep on increasing. तो इसका जो ग्राफ का कट है, that gives the value of median. Next, scatter plot represent the expression of two different variables and their relationship. Are the graphs that present the relationship between the two variables, how the two variables are moving. If one is increasing, another is increasing. This can be very easily seen through scattering. If there is no relationship between, then we find this plot scattered here and there. Otherwise, they move in line. So it reasonably assesses the linear degree of association. Next, and it is measured through correlation coefficient, which will be dealt in the other classes. So this is how the graphs look like of scattered plot. If it is moving in some line and some trend, so that shows that there's some relationship. If it moves in a good line form, then that means there's a good linear relationship between the two. Linear का क्या मतलब होता है? Linear का मतलब होता है जितना proportion में एक बढ़ रहा है उतना में दूसरा बढ़ रहा है. ठीक है? Suppose one value is 2, other is 4. This becomes 4, next becomes 8. So the ratio between the two x and y remains the same. That is the perfect linear relationship. Next. So strong correlation, strong positive correlation. First chart, weak positive correlation. The scatter is more away from this line. Strong negative correlation. That means one is increasing, other is decreasing, and weak negative correlation. So this gives an idea if the two variables are related, and accordingly we can work out further. We can calculate correlation coefficient. That means how much in terms. Then this is through a picture the relationship we get feel, but when we calculate correlation coefficient, we get exact measurement of what the values are, how much they are connected. The minimum value is 0, and it ranges from -1 to +1. Okay, next. So if the points are scattered here and there, so that shows there is no relationship between the two variables and there is no correlation. Next. So this is a presentation in meta-analysis forest plot. If you have, I'll briefly speak about it. You have different studies and you study different magnitude of risk factors and their confidence intervals and plot on one graph, and then combined value in form of a diamond, which is at the bottom of this. So this gives the combined value. And also it tries to compare the individual different studies. So if this crosses the line 1, that means the variable is not significantly associated with the outcome. So if it misses 1, it is significant. So of course, these are the statistical parts. If you know it, fine. Maybe this could be taken up in the further lectures. I mean, I hinted at. So interpreting a forest plot, I've already spoken about it. Next, funnel plot. Funnel plot क्या होता है जब meta analysis के लिए when we pick up different studies, तो हम कहीं अपने biased तो नहीं हो रहे. So, you know, if the studies have the values of standard error and risk within this within this triangle, so that means we are not biased. If we find the values, if we find the studies which have values outside this, then there is a possibility that we might have gone biased. Because what happens here, the standard error is very less, and the factor which is in consideration is highly significant. So if we are following our studies in this, there is a likelihood that we have picked up only those studies which have revealed positive results, protective results or high risk results. So if it is within this, we can feel that the publication biases at minimum. So just to hint about. Next. Since this was a presentation of data, so I thought this would be, I've already explained you this. I'll not read this. Next. So that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much. And I appreciate and thank Dr. Tiwari sir for adjusting the time according to my convenience. And thank you all participants for being with me today. And I look forward to meet you whenever I get an opportunity. It will be a pleasure to with all of you. Thanks a lot. Wonderful to be with you.
Thank you so much, sir, for a wonderful session, and thank you all delegates for supporting due to some time changing in the program. If there is any query regarding the session, you may ask within minute or after that you can send us also. So we will revert as soon as possible. So again, I hope. Thank you, Dr. Nirja. Wonderful lecture, sir. Thank you, everyone, for positive feedbacks in the chat box.
And I have given my email. I mean, any queries they can ask you,
Yes.
they can ask me, always with you.
Yes, I will share the PPT and the recorded session. So
Sure.
revise all delegates, and if have any query, you can ask us. So thank you on the behalf of organizer. We convey our sincere thanks to our respected resource person, Dr. Atul Juneja sir, for delivering a wonderful session. And thank you, sir, for your expertise, sharing expertise and your valuable time in this program. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Wonderful to be with you.
This is the end of today's session, and as usual, the next session is tomorrow at 7:30. That will be on descriptive statistics, delivered by Dr. Sudeep Ghosh from Gurdwara Medical College, West Bengal. Should be on time tomorrow at 7:30. Thank you, everyone.